Hey beauties, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Nat. Thank you all so much for joining me. Today we're trying out Fantasy Cosmetica. I recently tried a couple of their lipsticks and I was super impressed. So I'm extremely excited to finally be able to try out their eyeshadow formula. This is the Artificer palette, and it retails on their website for $57 Canadian. But I purchased mine from ifeelbeautiful.ca and it's $58 on their website. This launch also came out with a toolkit, and on both websites it's $22 Canadian, but I passed on it because I don't really rearrange my palettes. I like to keep them the way that they are. But I do think it's a super cool tool for those of you who do like to rearrange your palettes or compile your own color stories. Okay, so the description off ifeelbeautiful.ca says that this palette is a spicy, neutral palette inspired by the fantasy character Artificer, the builder, creator, and destroyer. The color story features 3 mattes and 6 shimmers, including marbled shades, a split pan, and mesmerizing bronze, gold, green, blue and purple shifts and reflex. And the description off the Fantasy Cosmetica website says, tinkers, crafters, alchemists, and blacksmiths. Artificers build, create, and destroy. They're creative and single-minded with an almost unhealthy dedication to their craft. You can find them in their shops, toiling away at night, and out in the battlefield eagerly testing their new inventions. So these pans are all magnetic and they're removable. This is what the palette looks like. Let's get into some swatches. First up, we have Alloy, a marbled white and gold translucent shimmer. Ooh, that's pretty. The next shade is Alchemy, and it's a split pan, so I was thinking I'm going to do my best to try and swatch each color first before we blend them together. So these are the 2 shades of Alchemy. Let's start with this one. It's a smooth, warm red. And the other half is a sparkly salmon. Ooh, that is sparkly. Can you guys see that? Wow. And then this one is swirled together. Swirled together, you get a shifty bronze. Pretty cool, right? Tinker, a mid-tone warm brown red. Wow, that's pigmented. Transmutation, gold to green shift with a warm brown base. Ooh, check this out. Infusion, high shine textured taupe with light reflex and a deeper base. Ooh. Craft, a mid-tone neutral brown. Next is Acid Etched. This is a marbled shade. Holy, look at that one. Okay, so this marbled shade is mixing a translucent green that shifts to blue, to purple, and to pink with an opaque bronze that shifts to yellow, to green, to blue with a gray base. That's one complex shade, hey? Inscription, a deep brown shimmer with burnt gold and green reflex. Oh, that is so interesting. And the last shade is Build, a deep neutral brown. Here are the shades of the Artificer palette in different lighting. Holy, look at that. Some of the feedback that I heard about this palette was that the color story wasn't so versatile, but after those swatches, I think it can be kind of versatile. So honestly, at first I was thinking of doing just one look today, but after those swatches, I feel like we can come up with 3, at least 3. But I think for this video, I'm going to do 3 first, and maybe some more later if I feel inspired. For look number 1, let's start off with the Tinker shade and Eyeshadow 04. Let's just start off in the outer corner. I'm using Eyeshadow 04 because it's a big fluffy brush, and these mattes seemed quite pigmented, so this brush will do a good job of diffusing the color. See, look, when you just pat in the pigment, it's pretty pigmented, right? So let's gently, I'm using very little pressure so we can get a transition shade kind of, or a background shade. Now I'm just going to take an E08 from Singe Beauty with nothing on it. It's completely clean, just so we can see if we can further soften out the edge. Make the edge as blown out as we can. Going back in with a bit more of the Tinker shade, and we're going to keep the intensity of the pigment closest to the lash line. Let's deepen up the outer corner now with the Build shade and Eyeshadow 00. Let's just push in some pigment first. That is also super pigmented. So I don't necessarily want this brown shade to take over, but just with my eyes, I prefer a deeper, darker outer corner. And let's blend that up into my imaginary crease area. That's pretty, don't you guys think? Ooh, I am into this. I'm finding these mattes really easy to work with and blend out, which I kind of had high expectations for this formula because I've heard such amazing things about Fantasy Cosmetica. Now back to the Eyeshadow 04 with no added pigment, just to diffuse the top edge a bit and bring some of that warm red shade back. I would wear this as an all matte look. Now for shimmer, let's dip into the Alchemy shade, and let's start at the third of the eye. Oh wow. So this is the shade that is the split pan, but I blended them together for this application. For inner third, let's try Transmutation. Let's just pop that in the inner third. Oh wow, look at that. Holy. Now going back in with a bit more of the Alchemy shade, just to blend these two shimmers together. Smoothing out the edge with a silicone brush. And going back in with the Build shade, that deep matte brown, and the Eyeshadow 00, just to re-intensify this outer corner and blend out the edge where the shimmer starts. Let's take it across very gently. I'm kind of curious to see what this alloy shade would look like in the inner corner. And I'm just going in with a super tiny brush. It's an E29 from ColourPop. Whoa. Alright, this side of my face is done off camera, so let's finish up this eye look. Let's go back to the Build shade and an E25 from ColourPop. Starting at the outer corner, let's just push in some pigment. Pull it across. And now the Shadow 04 with a teeny tiny bit of the Tinker shade. I'm going to finish up both of these eye looks with eyeliner and mascara later. So let's move on to look number 2. I'm going to go in with the shade Craft and the Shadow 03. Starting in the outer corner. I'm using another kind of fluffy diffusing brush. That is a nice neutral mid-tone brown, hey? I am impressed with this shade. Like, look how nicely it blends out, but you can also keep it pigmented where you want it to. Wow. Let's deepen it up with the Build shade and a Shadow 00. Same thing, let's push in some pigment at the outer corner. Pull it along the lash line. Back to the Shadow 03 to soften out the edges. For shimmer, let's start off with the shade Inscription, and just my finger, popping it on the third of the eye. Ooh, cool. Now Infusion. And that's going in the inner third. Wow, that's reflective. Back to the Build shade and the Shadow 00, just to re-deepen up the outer corner and blend in where the shimmer starts. Now that the rest of my face is done, let's finish up this eye look. I'm going to go back to the Build shade and an E25 from ColourPop. Starting at the outer corner, let's push in some pigment and gently pull it across. Shadow 03 with a tiny bit of the Craft shade, that mid-tone brown, just to soften out the edge. Alright, so there we have it. Here are the final looks for look number 1 and 2. Let me come in close to show you guys. And different lighting. I totally forgot to mention that I'm testing out a new primer. It's the Fenty Grip Trip Mattifying and Blurring Primer. My first impression is that I quite like it, but of course I'd like to use it a few more times to gather my final thoughts on it. And for foundation, I'm wearing the Dior Forever, the matte one, and I wear the shade 2.5N. I'll also mention my concealer now in case I forget later when I apply it. I'm going to use the Westman Atelier Concealer in L4. Now back to the eyes. For look number 3, let's start off with the shade Craft and Eyeshadow 03. Let's start off in the outer corner as usual. I'm thinking of doing halo eyes. So the top edge, I would like it to be super blended and diffused, keeping the majority of the pigment closer to the lash line. So as we go up into the brow bone area, we're doing big windshield wiper motions just to get in a nice wash of color as a background shade. And then dipping in again and just re-intensifying the outer corner closest to the lash line, so we can slowly build up this halo eye shape. Now switching to a smaller brush, this is a Eyeshadow 01 with the same shade Craft. So we can build up this inner third area. This brush is so tiny, it tickles. It tickles the inner corner. I might need to switch brushes. I'm trying out a Refer 02 right now. Now let's deepen things up with the shade Build and Eyeshadow 00. Starting at the outer corner again. So I did my right eye off camera, and I think moving forward, that's kind of what I'm going to do just to save time, unless you guys have an objection or have an opinion on whether you want to see me do the right eye as well. But it's also because, like I've mentioned a few times, right now my husband has crazy overtime hours, so I'm trying to keep these videos shorter. Okay, now let's gently blend it up. This shade is so pigmented. I love it. Back to the Eyeshadow 03 with a tiny bit of the Craft shade, just to soften out the edges. Switching to an E01 from Singe Beauty with the Build shade. And working in this inner corner or inner third area. So same kind of idea, I just want to keep the depth and the intensity of this darker pigment closest to the lash line and a gradual fade as it moves up. I moved over a little too far here, I think, so I'm going to try and blend that out with the Eyeshadow 01 and no added product. And now I've switched to the Eyeshadow 00 to see if we can diffuse the top edge of the inner third. Eyeshadow 03 again for more edge softening and blending. Now it's time for shimmer. I'm so excited to try this one out. It's acid etched. Like, look at that. So we're just going to use the finger and stick it in the center Ooh. Again, keeping the intensity of this shimmer as well closer to the lash line. And as it gets up towards the brow bone, we're just gonna let it scatter so it's diffused. Let's add the shade Inscription and just a silicone brush from Amazon. Using the silicone brush will give us a little bit more precision because I just want to stick it on the edge. It softens the edge of the center shimmer shade a little bit. Like that. Now going back in with the build shade, the matte deep brown, and a Shoto 00, just to re-intensify the outer corner and blend in where the shimmer starts. And same thing on the inner third. Back to the Shoto 03 with a little bit more of the craft shade, which is the mid-tone brown, just to soften out the edges. Alright, the rest of my face is done, so we can finish up this eye look. Let's go back in with the shade Build and an E25 from ColourPop. Let's just stamp that at the outer corner. And gently pull it across. Switching to the EO1 because it's slightly smaller, just so we can get it a little bit into the inner third of the lower lash line. Now taking the Shoto 03 with a bit more of the craft shade, the mid-tone brown, so we can soften out the bottom edge. I'm kind of curious to see if an inner corner highlight will work with this eye look, so let's go ahead and use the shade Alloy and a tiny brush from ColourPop, the E29. And let's just stick it right here at the tear duct. Alright, here it is. This is the final look for look number 3. Let me come in close to show you guys. And different lighting. This 9-pan palette impressed me more than I thought it would. I already had kind of high expectations for the formulation of Fantasy Cosmetica, just because I've heard such great things all around. The mattes are super easy to work with. The shimmers are kind of insane. Let's look at it again. Okay, so yeah, these 9 shades honestly create a bunch of different looks in my opinion. I'm so happy I picked up this palette. Well, that wraps up this video. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with me. I truly appreciate you all so much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, or if it's nighttime for you, I hope you get a good night's rest. I'll catch you in the next one.